V0 recently released their own API into public beta, meaning you can now basically use V0 as an LLM, just like you would one of Anthropic or OpenAI's models. If you're someone that struggles a lot with design consistency, or if you're constantly fumbling around with different MCP servers that are meant to help you with design, this could be a potential alternative for you, because nothing is sadder than having an amazing idea or amazing solution to a problem, but it looks like a steamy pile of. So in this video, I thought we'd do it reaction style and actually try this out for the first time. I've only used it to this point to create a basic navbar component, which, let's be honest, isn't exactly rocket science. So I've got 3 different very basic, vanilla, unstyled, untouched pricing pages for the Next.js SaaS starter kit that I've been building for my subscribers. And so we're gonna hop in, we're gonna use V0's APIs, and we're gonna style those 3 different pages with a few different prompts and see how it performs with a one-shot test, meaning one prompt, let's see what this thing makes. So it should be pretty cool. Let's get into it, shall we? So like I said, if we go in and we hop into v0.dev, you're gonna see that you have this little chip telling us that we have this V0 API now in beta. So you can click on that if you wanna see the documentation for it. And then specifically, if you wanna use it with Cursor, there is an entire guide on how to connect this thing. I'm gonna show you the highlights of that. So there's gonna be 2 things that you want here. The first is going to be this V0 endpoint. We are gonna need this, so make sure you copy this URL. And then the second thing that you are going to need is an API key. And so you just need to go to v0.dev/chat/settings/keys, and you should see something that looks like this. And then you can just create a new API key and copy both of those. So we need the API key and we need that URL that we just copied. So now from there, if we want to use this thing, pretty simple. Go into Cursor, go to your Cursor settings. Once you're inside, go to Models. Then we're gonna scroll down and there's this option right here for OpenAI key. So we have this, and what we're gonna do is we click on this little down caret, and this is where we're gonna put in that V0 URL that we copied. So https api.v0.dev/v1. You're gonna save that, and then you're gonna plop in your API key that you had. You're gonna hit verify, and then it's gonna ask you to enable OpenAI key. You hit that. If there's an error, obviously resolve that, but it should go through successfully. So when you want to actually use this thing, you need to hop over here and you need to select an OpenAI model like GPT-4o. Now, anytime you're chatting with GPT-4o and you send this message through, it is going to be hitting that V0 API. Now, the reason you want to keep that in mind is that the V0 API isn't exactly cheap. And so we want to make sure that we're not just using it needlessly. And it's also a little bit slow. I don't know if it's something with Cursor going on today, but it is very slow. So that being said, if we don't want to be using this, we'll actually run into errors if we don't turn it off. So for example, if we came in and tried to chat and we said something like, help me build a dashboard, I don't know, something basic like that, it is going to error out on us. And so just make sure when you want to have a conversation not using this thing that we just come through and we turn this off, all right? So that being said, I'm gonna turn it back on because we want to use it right now. And so I'm gonna come through, I'm gonna pick GPT-4o, and now we're gonna go through and we are going to start designing things out. So we have this basic starter project up and running. And now there's some different things that are in here like authentication and things like that. But what we're gonna specifically look at are the pricing pages. So these pages popped out generically, right? I said, hey, make me a pricing page. I didn't give it any sort of prompting whatsoever about what should be on there or anything like that. And it just popped me out one of these. And so I thought we'd go through and we can style these. So number 2 and 3 are exact clones of each other. 1 or 2 are pretty much the same, but slightly different looking. And so we're gonna go through, we're gonna leave number 1 the same so we can look at it. So let's go prompt pricing 2 and pricing 3. We'll hop back into Cursor. And now the first thing we're gonna do is I'm just gonna give it a very open-ended prompt like someone might give V0. And so I'm gonna say, build me a modern, sleek pricing page for my SaaS app. And I'm gonna actually pass in the context here properly. So this would be pricing 2. Okay, so I'm gonna pass in pricing 2. And we're just gonna say go. I'm going to let it go for a second, and then I'll come back once it is actually completed. So I thought, hey, while this thing is going, let me actually pop over and show you guys the billing and usage. So this is obviously something that you'd probably want to keep track of. So you get your credits by default if you're on a plan. I think I'm on the Pro plan or one of their basic plans. I'm not sure. But I have this $20 credit, and it's showing you how much of it has been used. Now, like I said, I've generated a nav bar, and I did one or two other things using it, but you can see what this actually looks like. So it's telling you, basically it's looking like anywhere from like 1 cent up to 15 cents, depending on what exactly I'm asking it to do. So if you do want to keep track of how much you're utilizing this and like which of your workflows actually generate a heavy load on your balance, you can come through and you can look at that. So we can see it's already down, just used another 60 cents basically with this pricing page thing. So that being said, it is still running. We will come back in 1 second and look at this. Okay, so it looks like it just finished. So tell me what it did. So if we just scroll back up real quick, it did build us a plan, returns a plan of what it was going to do, create visually striking header, modern pricing cards, feature comparison for better plan differentiation, testimonials, FAQ, and a CTA. So it went through, told us what it did. So if we were to hop back over now, we're in our base pricing 2, and boom, I would say did a pretty nice job at really amping this thing up, again, compared to what it looked like before. So, if we were to go look at our vanilla pricing page, kind of bland, right? Pretty bland. A basic FAQ that's not really styled very nicely, and like, I don't know, this doesn't make it seem like this is the popular option, right, in the middle. And then we come over here, we have this nice, I like this, they added the monthly versus annual slider. Definitely a better headline, I would say, right? Because simple and transparent would be, I think, the value prop there instead of just pricing plans, right? So they did a pretty nice job there. They did a cool job differentiating the enterprise plan, making this stuff pop out a little more. I like the way they did that. The project comparison I thought was pretty cool. This little table they added in. So overall, it's definitely better than what I had before. And again, this is with no real guidance on the prompt, right? It was very, very basic. And so what would happen? I don't know what's going to happen. I will say that first. If we just came through and we took this same exact prompt, so we're going to give that same prompt. We're going to give it pricing 3 this time. But I, before this project, added in some design rules. So let's add in those design rules. And I'm going to say follow the attached design rules. Put this output on pricing 3. Okay, so we're going to let that go, and then I'm going to show you what the design rules are. So again, this is pretty much the same exact prompt that we just gave, except we're saying, and I want you to follow these specific rules when you do it. So let's go look at what those are. So I pulled these directly from my 4-part Vibe planning system that I have, which is in the free school group that you can go get if you want it. There is no charge for it. But we have these different design guidelines that we like to follow. So aesthetics, meaning like how do you craft that like visual hierarchy of things, like how are things meant to look, and then other considerations that we have. And so the way that I developed these was going out and looking at different design books, design YouTubers, which there are very good YouTubers on this stuff, asking models like Claude to do deep research into these topics, to really look at product design and what makes a high-performing like FANG, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google style company, like what makes them actually really great? Like what makes Airbnb's app design great? What are those principles that those people follow? And so we can see some of those things here. Bold simplicity, breathable white space, systematic color theory, visual density optimization that balances information availability with cognitive load, right? You just don't want to throw a bunch of shit in people's faces. So we have these different guidelines that we follow for aesthetics. And then what are other considerations? I think a lot of times people don't think through what is the actual goal of this feature and how is the user meant to experience it? How should it feel to the user? We want the language models to really think about those things when they start designing. So what are the user goals and tasks? How will we architect the presentation of information and how we display it to somebody? Especially if we have an app that's very complicated. How do you progressively disclose information, right? How do we do all of these different things? And so we just passed all of this in, and we're going to see if we get a better output with it. And I can already see, based on what it's putting out here, it definitely claims to have taken that stuff into account. Bold simplicity intuitive navigation, visual hierarchy. Like, it is following these things. And so I'm actually excited. Drum roll. And boom. So here we go. So if we were to just compare these side by side, I will say this one feels a little bit tighter. So I think if we were to look at the progression that we had between these, this one was like, well, a little bit basic, right? A little bit basic. Wasn't really popping out very much. 2, I think the thing that actually stuck out most visually was how it chose to do the color accenting. Or I think the color accenting had a really big impact on this. I like how it chose to put testimonials in here. If we look at this one, I think this section looks a lot nicer, looks a lot tighter, but I think they could have used colors a little more strategically to make this really pop. That's the one thing that I kind of don't like. So we'll see what happens if I went back through and I say, look at the colors we added in pricing 2 and integrate some of those into pricing 3 for strategic pops of color. Also, add testimonials in. So I'm going to give it one more chance because I want to see what it does, because a lot of these are actually giving guidance around things like using color strategically. And our template that we have here doesn't actually have any colors in it. Like, there's no style guide or anything like that. It is a basic Next.js app with like gray color gradients basically. And so I do want to see what it does here. But if we were to say which one of these performed better in the one-shot test, I would say I was more impressed with this. But again, I think it's because the color struck me. And if we were to look at this, I think this actually looks more professional as far as how things have been spaced out, especially this section right here. So let's see what happens once this finishes through, and then we will wrap it up. And so here we go. We had it go back through and use some of the colors from the other page, and it went through and it did exactly that. And so it looks a lot nicer now, obviously. Definitely pops a lot more. Overall, I would say pretty happy with it as far as like a basic design tool goes, especially for like a SaaS web app. Hey guys, so I'm cutting this in after the fact because when I got finished with this video, I had this lingering sense of like, did I give a fair shake of V0 versus any other tool you might use or system you might use? And so what I did was I went back and made an update. And so what I did was I gave 2 different prompts. One, I just had it take my design principles and I said, hey, based on, this is how I like to do my typography, this is how I like to do buttons, and this is how I like to do colors and all of that type of stuff. I had it go redo that kind of more basic vanilla one, and I got an okay output from that. Then what I did was I really wanted to test this and give a fair shake versus what an actual other tool or workflow would be that I would personally use. And so what I did was I gave one prompt to the V0 API, and then I gave the same exact identical prompt to Claude Sonnet 4. And so here is what the difference between those two things look like. So this is the V0 version of it. And so if I was to come through and select a plan, you can see it has this little pending state, and then it has this little success thing that pops up. If I wanted to go see more stuff, I could go there, right? And so it's basically just showing me what a loading screen and success screen would look like. If we went over to the pricing 3 and did the same thing, we can see it does that same flash. I do think this looks a lot nicer. So again, this is coming out of Claude Sonnet 4. Now, the other thing that I like about what Claude did is it showed me what an error screen would look like, which is part of what I asked in the prompt. So V0 actually dropped this out of the prompt. And so if we were to look at both of these states that I have, so if I was to reset this one, this is what it looks like inside of Claude. It has this little processing loading thing. Then it has what the success looks like. And then it also gives me what a failure would look like. I do overall think that Claude looks better. But here is the difference. And this is the reason I wanted to reshoot this piece of the video. The question becomes, do you actually use V0? Is V0 actually good as far as using it through the API? And here's what I will say. V0 is going to be a pretty good solution for you, because again, this is always about what makes sense for you and what you are trying to do. If you're trying to quickly vibe code your way to a solution without taking steps along the way to stop and dial things in. You're just trying to go from point A to point B as quickly as possible with something that looks acceptable. V0 is a pretty good solution. And the only real gripe that I have with it is the responses that you get from the API are pretty slow, and it does seem to drop context. So it would benefit from you being very specific and dialed in about what you are passing through to the system. Using a more robust approach with something like Claude Sonnet 4 or 3.7, it's going to be a lot better if you're trying to build a little bit more slowly, but a little bit more deliberately, right? You don't want to just fly from A to B as quickly as possible. You want to take time and nurture this thing and have a really incredible output in the end. You're going to be better off using a design-oriented prompt system to get you there. So the main takeaway, which one of these tools is better? Well, it actually depends. V0's API, it's pretty cool that they're even offering this and they're building their own model. But that being said, it clearly has a very specific use case. It is for people that are truly only wanting to vibe code from prompt to prompt without really engineering the prompts very much. You want to be able to go in and say, hey, build me a pricing page. Boom. Hey, build me a dashboard that takes this type of data. Boom. It'll do those types of things for you and build you components that at least look nice and don't go off the rails in some crazy, crazy way. And we actually saw this in other videos that I've done on this channel where V0, while it didn't necessarily have stunning designs, it at least made designs that made sense, right? So when you compare it to tools like Replit and Lovable, for example, V0 was almost always better. That being said, if you want to build something that looks really professional, really modern, you are going to be a lot better off using a tool like Claude Sonnet and taking your time as you move through those different layers and those different pieces to build a UI that's really well thought through and really makes sense. But then again, that puts us in the eternal debate of what does it really mean to vibe code in the process, and where is this distinction between traditional product design and product development going to mesh with all of this new English as the hottest programming language world that we're living in today. So that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.